So we'll have to wait a couple of minutes for people to join us, and I look forward to a quite engaging session. Many thanks to everybody that has already joined us already, and it's always a great delight to have you on webinars, irrespective of the time zone where you are, and everywhere that you can actually be able to join this session. And I would also like to appreciate every person that has been consistent in attending our webinars, and hopefully we ensure that this session is also as highly productive and highly engaging as much as possible. So I would, without much ado, I would start this session now by way of introduction. So solutions journalism is gradually taking hold among journalists across the globe as a tool for deeply engaging with communities and issues they report on. As the journalism landscape continues to change with a greater push toward collaboration, the question arises, how can a collaborative framework be applied to solutions journalism? I believe it's possible for journalists to work collaboratively on their solutions journalism ideas to drive engagement and increase accountability across the issue they care about. But how can they do this? What examples of collaborative SoJo ideas can they draw inspiration from? What opportunities are out there for journalists anywhere? These are some of questions that today's session will be answering. And we are glad to be joined by a good friend of the house, who is Chibuike Alagboso. Chibuike, can you say hello to our board members and webinar attendees?
Hi, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining from.
Yes, thank you very much, Chibuike. So Chibuike currently works at the Nigeria Health Watch as a senior program manager and leads the Nigeria side of the Solutions Journalism Africa, Solutions Journalism Africa initiative. And since 2021, the Africa Initiative has worked with at least 30 newsrooms across Nigeria and has trained more than 100 newsrooms and freelance journalists to publish more than 200 solutions-focused stories. And so we are really glad that he's been able to be on this call with us. Personally, Chibuike has nearly a decade of experience in public health communication and advocacy. He is passionate about leveraging strategic communication, data, and storytelling to advocate for public health policies. And his interest spans the social enterprise, health communication, technology, and journalism sectors. He has conducted various fellowships, including the Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders through the U.S. Department of State, the LEDE Fellowship through the Solutions Journalism Network, and the Journalist in Residence Fellowship through the Institute for Tropical Medicine in Belgium. And Alagboso currently writes, trains, and mentors journalists on solutions journalism across the globe. And before we go to his presentation, I would like to also appreciate everybody that is on this call with us. As usual, like some people are already doing, would like to know you and where you are joining us from. Please use the chat box for this function. Let us know your name and let us also know where you are joining us from. We'll be glad if you can share be actively participating on this call. Also to our followers and those that are watching this live stream on Facebook, we're also saying thank you very much for joining us, irrespective of the time zone, and thank you for making our time out of your daily plan to be on this call to learn and to actively engage with us. The comment box below the video that you are watching right now is where we hope that you are going to use to actively interact with us. So one thing I would like to know before Chibuike takes the floor is I would like to ask our audience your solutions journalism experience. Personally, have you written any solutions journalism story? If yes or no, let us know. And have you also collaborated on any of these stories. Let us know yes or no. And if you'd like to share your social journalism and collaborative journalism experience with us, immediately after Chibuike's presentation is over, I would like to have that conversation with you so that you can share your personal experience. And so I would like to bring on Chibuike and let's see what our participants are saying. And so we, yes, yes, Dari, thank you very much. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. I'm still waiting for others to actually share their own experience. But while waiting for that, I would like to say thank you for joining us, Sandra. Thank you for joining us, Vinata. Chu, we see you. Justin from the Congo, we appreciate you. Karen from Canada, thank you very much for making this time to be a part of us. Abdulaziz from Bahrain, Alice from Brazilian Amazon. Dawood from Nigeria, and thank you very much, everybody. And please let us know your social journalism experience as I yield the floor to Chibuike. Chibuike, if you are free, you have the floor. You can start sharing your slides, and I'll be back for the interactive session.
Thank you so much, boss. Sorry, can you give me permission to share? I'm unable to do that yet.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's fine. Welcome, everyone. Karen, good to have you. Noah, Ellie, good to have you all join. I look forward to learning and engaging and interacting with you all. And like Paul said, the format has always been, interactive. It's not a one-way thing. Yes, I can share now. Thanks, Paul.
Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you. So as with all webinars of ICFJ that I've attended, my screen sharing is paused. Can you see my screen? I'm seeing notification that my screen sharing is paused. You're on mute.
I can see it. We're saying loading.
Okay.
You can stop and share again.
Yeah. So I think it's after going full screen that I should. I think that's how Google Slide works. I'm not mistaken. I think it's after going full screen that I can now share. So can you see now or still can't see?
Yes, Chibuike has started screen sharing, but we are still waiting for what it wants to share.
Okay, that's about that. Okay, so I'm going to screen share now. So you can see my screen now.
Yes, I can see it. Can you now start slideshow? So that's
yeah, but I think the problem starts when I go to slideshow.
Just click it first.
Okay.
That's it.
Is it?
It's loading. Still saying loading. Okay, can you escape from the full slideshow and just share it? Or you can give me authorization to share for you.
Yes, please. Even though it would have been better if I'm sharing myself. So sorry about this, everyone.
Or you can download, if you can download. If you have it outside of Google.
Yes, have it offline.
Yes.
Maybe it's an internet issue as well.
Yeah, just give me permission, then probably I can share for you.
Okay, so I have it as a PowerPoint document now. Let's give it one more shot. Then if I'm unable to, you will go ahead and. So you can see my screen now.
Yes.
So this is offline. Let me go full screen and see.
Yeah, straight away.
Okay, wow. So sorry about that. Google Slide, I guess it's the internet because for Google Slide, it's online. But yeah, so do you want to see what's happening in the chat box or should I continue? Because I see it's
No,
been
just
very
continue.
busy.
Continue.
Okay.
We'll interact with the chats after.
Okay, so we'll have some all right, so thank you very much again for this opportunity to share and also learn with you all on this important topic of solution journalism, but this time around collaborative. In the past, we've talked about solution journalism on this platform and I've been opportune to also be part of that conversation to share. I think the video should be somewhere on ICFJ's platforms, YouTube and Facebook. Sorry for one quick inquiry. How long do I have for this so that we can have time for interactions?
40 minutes, 45.
Okay. All right. So it's really a topic that I'm very passionate about. I'm talking about solution journalism, especially on how it impacts communities, how it impacts society. Like Paul said earlier, I work with Nigeria Health Watch. It's a health communication and advocacy organization that is based in Nigeria. But for us, solution journalism is an important strategy for the work we do because we advocate. We push for Nigeria's health sector to be better. But while pushing for that, we also realize that there are things that are working, there are efforts that are working. So we make an serious investment into putting those things on the spotlight. And for us, that's how our journey started into solution journalism. And now being able to be the ones propagating the practice across the country through the project called Solution Journalism Africa Initiative that is happening both in Kenya and in Nigeria, but we are the ones leading it in Nigeria and it's being supported by the Solution Journalism Network. So yes, like I said, we'll keep this interactive. It's not a lecture per se. So it's a two-way thing. Just like the chat box has been busy, I also like us to keep it busy. Use the chat box to share. I think it's already something Paul has asked earlier. Do you already do solution journalism, SoJo for short? If yes, why do you do it? If you don't already, why? Maybe no opportunity yet or no commissions to put it into practice. So please, let's use the chat box, share our experience around solution journalism. Do you see something you already do? Have you done a solution journalism story before? In any format, you can also tell us the format if you have. So yes, please, let's keep the chat, let's keep them coming in the chat box. What is your experience around solution journalism? Earlier, I think I came across someone saying they have been in trainings, but they haven't done any solution story yet. But please, more people share. Can take maybe if you can see 2, 3 comments, we can go ahead. You already do solution journalism. What has been your experience? Why do you do it? Yeah, I see something from Sawahid. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Forgive me if I did not. So he freelances with Social Voices based in Kano, Northwestern Nigeria. Yes, he's attended solutions trainings from my organization before Nigeria as well. Thanks for sharing. But have you done any solution stories yet? Larissa has not. Okay, I hope you get to do after now. I hope you start thinking about ideas or potential story ideas that you can do, especially as we're going to be talking about it in the context of collaborative. Wow, though he has done at least 6 and says she even trains journalists on solution journalism. He has done some, but some people think it's PR. Interesting. Noah has said the last one he co-produced was indexed by the Solution Journalism Tracker. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. So I also like to know what the reasons are why you do it. Okay, just keep the conversation going. But just a quick recap, because of course we are talking about collaborative solution journalism, but we can't really do it if we don't quickly talk about what it is, why it's important to do it, especially for those who are not familiar with it or those who have not done it yet. Okay. So there's this report by Reuters Institute for Journalism that shows that audiences across the globe are avoiding the news, news avoidance, news avoidance. A couple of reasons were given in that report for that news avoidance phenomenon that they noticed. But essentially, that's really why solution journalism is important, because it's working to change that. So I'm not going to say it has changed that, or so it's working. It's a work in progress. And if you do solution journalism, if it's part of your strategy or how you do your work, you understand that it's always good to present these interventions as a work in progress. So that's really what solution journalism is helping to change that narrative. How is it doing that? It's showing that it is not all hopeless, because I think one of the reasons given in that report why people feel powerless. Okay, you read the news, you feel it's all negative. There's really nothing you can do because it's all problems all the time staring you in the face. But with solution journalism, you're able to go beyond the problem to say, this is what these communities are doing to address that problem. So it's helping in that regard. That way, people are being empowered. Audiences are empowered to act because you're seeing what others are doing and you are thinking, oh, it's not all bad. They are doing this. Maybe I even have the capacity to help in my own little way, to address the situation. And we saw a lot of that during COVID. Of course, why the problem was there, the numbers, the infection, but people also started standing up to say, what can we do to support our communities? And we saw a lot of that happening. And that happened because more of these stories, more of these community efforts were also being shared. Okay, so it also gives agency to communities, yeah? So it empowers communities to also be part of their own storytelling. It's not just about journalists going into communities, telling these stories. Communities are saying, this is what is working, this is what we are doing. And solution journalism is helping to amplify that. It's creating deeper conversations, because now the conversations are not just about the problems. Okay, it's opening it up for what's working, what's not working, how is it working. Assessing all of those things, it's providing more insight and creating deeper conversations. Again, it's engendering accountability, because you're saying what communities are doing and you're using that to ask questions. You're using that to ask your leaders questions. You're using that to ask your own stakeholders questions to say, look, this is not impossible. It's not rocket science. I have a story about what these communities are doing. Why can't we do it? Probably we have the same resources and all. That's really, how solution journalism is helping to change that narrative. Again, to do it, for those who are not already familiar, it has 4 pillars if you're going to do a solution journalism story. If you can see in the chat, someone said they did it, and that's conversation of seeing it as PR always comes up. But we always advise, if you can try and stick to these 4 pillars, it's helpful, and it helps put the picture that, put the whole story out there, that this is not the PR story. First, that story has to talk about the response, okay? Because that's what this whole conversation is about. Yes, there is a problem. So many social issues. It could be healthcare, climate change, just name it. There are so many issues out there, and we know about those issues. But solution journalism goes beyond talking about the problems to say, this is what is working, this is the response, okay? And in doing that, you're seeing how that response is working, how that intervention is working to address the problem. So in doing that as well, you also go to the second pillar, which is the evidence, because you're saying this is the evidence that this response is working, okay? Not just what they intend to do, but this is actual evidence that what they are doing is making a difference in their communities. And of course, it can't always be successful. Okay, but the key thing there, the important thing there is an effort, there is a response somewhere, someone is trying to address a problem. And of course, the insight is another important pillar. It produces approaches or lessons. That story has has approaches or lessons that others can learn from. So someone looks at the story, they can say, oh, this is what was done to address this problem, but this is how they were able to achieve it. Probably it's been tried somewhere else, but it failed. But in this particular story, this is why it's working. So that's the insight that someone can take away, whoever is reading the story. And of course, limitation, because there's no perfect solution. It's always a work in progress. Okay, so these are the important pillars that make up a good solution story. And these are important because, of course, if a response is worth featuring, it's worth having its own story, not just a mention. So you don't do a story focus on the problem from beginning to the end. At the last paragraph, you now throw in and say, oh, but this community, they are trying to address the problem. That's not a solution story. In that instance, not saying it's not a good report, maybe it's a format you want to take for your report, but if you want to call it a solution story, the story has to be about what was done or what is being done to address that intervention and that particular problem. Okay, I mean, if you're also going to talk about a story that is newsworthy, it's the results. What did they achieve? What changed before and after? And that's why the evidence of impact is also very important. Again, the insight is important because you have to show what's useful in addressing systemic problems. Again, that's why we do the work with all of us as journalists, all of us as advocates, in whatever format or form that you do the story. You are trying to make a change. You're trying to get the society to change. Okay, that way you are fulfilling our mission. So, but how can you do that if that story shows exactly what made that intervention work? That's why the insight pillar is very important. And of course, it's not PR. Again, I'm glad someone mentioned it in the chat. This conversation always comes up. But it's not PR because you are examining a response. You're not promoting it. Okay, they can hire a PR person, a publicity person if they need to get more eyeballs on their intervention or that sort of a thing. But if you're doing a solution story about how a community is responding to a problem, you want to examine that intervention. You want to examine that response. How is it done? What's working? What's not working? What can be improved? What are experts saying? What is the evidence that it's even working? That's why the limitation pillar is very important. Okay, so that's a quick recap of what solution journalism is. But our focus of our conversation today is how do we do it in a collaborative way? Okay, so that all of these things we are talking about, they are talking about accountability, talking about empowering people, talking about giving agency to people. It's amplified more, it has more reach. That's why it's important to want to talk about collaboration. Okay. So quickly again, as much as possible, let's keep it interactive. Thanks for your comments so far. In your own opinion, I don't know how many of you have done any collaborative work before, whether solution journalism or not solution journalism, but in your own opinion, what do you think why do you think it's important to collaborate? Why collaborate? Use the chat box to let us know. What are your thoughts around collaboration? Okay. Waiting. Remember, we agreed to keep it interactive, and I'm glad how it's been going so far. How interactive, how engaging we've been in the chat box. I see your comments. Yes, Paul will read them out later so we can continue the engagement. Thanks. And richer, important keyword. The story done by more than one person is richer. Collaboration makes it more impactful. It adds more perspectives from Sandra to the story that makes it stronger. Thank you so much for sharing that. Swati, yes, Swati says the chat is active. I'm loving it. I'm loving it too. Thanks for the comments, for engaging. Collaboration is good because it covers all angles as much as possible. For depth, reach, and comparisons of response implementation. Yes, comparing. Very, very important, especially you're talking about accountability. You want to compare, see what's working here, what's not working here. Not really, not because you want to, um, call out anybody or any sort of thing. You also do it from a place from a good place, because you want to see what's working here. How did this work here? How was it in this particular project implemented here? So you can see what's working or not. Shared knowledge. Thank you all so much. Zara says, by working together, news organizations can expand both their resources and reach. Thanks for sharing. These are really great reasons why we should collaborate. Yes, and I'm glad we shared that. I think some of what you said are, what I've also written. More reasons. These are some of the reasons why. I think you've mentioned them already in the chat. Was compare responses. That came out strongly in the chat. Work faster. Okay, you're able to cover more ground. We are in an age where things, we're always on the move. Yes, of course. That's conversation for another day. When we are being advised to slow down. Of course, we don't always have to be fast, but we all know that the reality is it's always on the go. Okay, you don't pitch that idea today, you are likely to, the editor is likely to tell you, oh, someone has already pitched this idea, so you have to look for another one. So you're able to cover more ground, you're able to work faster when you collaborate. You have more evidence to drive accountability. Remember what we talked about when we say solution journalism helps with accountability. Okay, you're going to a community, you are saying, this is what is working in community B. Why can't we adopt it in community A? What's going on? So imagine you're able to collaborate with more people, with more journalists, with more communities to find out what's working in their communities. Of course, you can't do that alone if you want to do it fast. Yeah. So imagine you have more examples of what other people are doing to address a particular problem of interest. Okay, that's the power of collaboration, because with that evidence, you're able to drive accountability. You're able to ask questions to say, look, why are we not learning from all of these communities? You have more examples. You have more opportunity to drive engagements. Okay, remember we talked about how solution journalism is helpful to drive engagement. So with these examples, with more collaborations, with more experiences that you're getting from other places, you're able to drive engagement. Increased impact, of course, that also came out in the chat. Someone said it's why it's good to collaborate, because you are asking these questions, you are holding people accountable. People are living up to expectation. They are doing what they're supposed to do. If it's an investment, for example, say a fund that was given to 2 communities, because you're able to collaborate with other journalists in other places to say, look, let's talk about how this investment is being used, how it's being utilized in our different communities. You're able to increase impact, okay? Because that way, the people who are responsible for using those funds are aware that, look, these guys are looking at what we are doing, our results, and they are comparing and they are contrasting. More awareness about social issues. I think this has been increased, more reach, because you're not limited by distance. Because we are open to collaboration, you can sit in your home in UAE, wherever it is you work from, UK, United States, wherever, and collaborate with journalists in those places. And that way you are reaching journalists who are on the ground, and it also reduces this issue of phenomenon of parachuting journalism. So you just come into the community, do the story, and leave again. That way you are reaching more people right where you are. So I found this interesting report from a case study on collaborative local journalism, also from the Reuters Institute. This from the lead researcher. I think this also speaks to all of what we've been saying, why collaboration is important. She said it has emerged as an important strategy that is allowing journalists to work together to report on important issues facing their communities, while also benefiting from knowledge sharing, pooled resources, mentorship, and enhanced reach. think this sort of sums up everything we're saying why collaborative journalism is important. Interestingly, there's actually a conference dedicated to collaborative journalism. I'm sure some of us know about it. It happens in the US. It happens virtually, but I think this year it's happening in person in DC. So a whole event dedicated to collaborative journalism. That should tell you the importance, why we should do more of it. But this, we're talking about tips also, what we hope to achieve today, the tips, the tricks, how to do this effectively. So two key things come to mind. It's important to compare. So when you're doing collaborative solution journalism, it's important to compare likes. What do I mean by that? So you're looking at story ideas, what to work on. Yeah. So, and you're looking at how different people are addressing an issue. So it wouldn't make sense, of course, that goes without saying anyway. You wouldn't be comparing how. So yes, you are looking at stories in public health, for instance, but even though it's public health, there are different areas. Okay, you won't be looking at how an intervention is addressing, let's say, malaria in this community, and in another community, you're looking at how they are addressing prevalence of typhoid or maybe another infectious disease. You see, that doesn't balance. So it has to be likes. So you're looking at malaria, then in the other community, you should also be looking at how they are addressing malaria issues. Okay, because that way you are saying this is the common issue, malaria, but this is how community A is addressing it, and this is how community B is addressing it. So if you're now working with, say, journalists or even community members, in the other community to investigate what they are doing, you see, you are comparing a common thing. You're comparing likes, and this is an example that quickly comes to mind. It was done by one person actually, but it's a collaborative effort because she worked with other people. Rona May, I'm sure some of us on the call know her. At the peak of the COVID outbreak, this was way back in 2020, and if you followed the outbreak, the pandemic, I'm sure you realize that this was like the peak by April. This is story by April. The story was published April 6th. Okay. But then you see the common thing that she compared there is the drive-through testing, mobile drive-through testing for COVID tests. Now we're looking at lessons from Germany for Nigeria. Okay, she's based in Germany, but she didn't come down to Lagos, Nigeria to do that story. How was it possible? Collaboration with people, with journalists, with people who were involved, who were on the ground. So you see all of the things we talked about earlier, more rich. You do things faster without having to leave, without having to be restricted by geography or your location. You're able to do that story. So that's why it's important if that's one tip or one trick you have to keep in mind, you have to compare something that is similar. That way when you're now reaching out to people, you are now asking them, oh, what are you doing to address this particular problem? And you can see some of the takeaways, what came out of that. The story is on Daily Premium Times Nigeria, I think. That's why the story is on. So you can always go there I just picked out these two infographics, so you see the team, something that has also resonated since we started this conversation about comparing and contrasting. So you now see what came out of that investigation. So what are these guys doing? What are they doing in Lagos? What are they doing in that city in Germany? What are the takeaways? Okay, that's why collaborative effort, especially if you're doing solution journalism. So you see there, just looking at what's working, or this story looked at what's working. Okay, as far as a mobile drive-through testing is concerned. So whoever is reading the story, they don't even have to be from these two communities or these two countries. They can also look at it and say, oh, this is what these guys are doing. This is what they are doing. This is the results they are getting here. This is the result they are getting here. What can we take away? Assuming we want to replicate that same intervention in our community, what can we take away from that? I think this is really a great story showing what you can achieve when you work collaboratively to do solution stories. The other second thing I also, this is another example. This was in the US. I'm sure some of us who have been through solution journalism trainings, either from Nigeria Health Watch or from maybe other partners who train on solution journalism, SJ. And this is a good example that always comes up. Again, this was done by two journalists. I'm not sure if they are, in different cities, but if you look at the stories, you see that it's also a case of comparing. You're looking at what's working in this city. This city is having an issue of lead poisoning, and they keep complaining about it. But then they now shifted to say, instead of always talking about the problems, let's investigate what's happening in other cities. What's happening to what are other cities doing to address their lead poisoning issues? What strategies are they implementing, or what strategies are they adopting? So that also shows you what can happen when you look beyond the problem, and when you look at seeing what others are doing. Yes, some of us already do solution stories like you've shared in the chat. It's interesting to look at solution stories, what's working around you, what my community is doing to address this issue, what this community is doing to address these issues. But this is now taking it a notch higher, And you see, when you do this, you have more options, more potentials for story ideas, more opportunities to collaborate, because you're going beyond, even if you're writing about the response in your community, but then you're taking it a step further to say, this same response, what are other communities doing to address it, or how are they addressing it? Okay, so that opens you up to more opportunities to collaborate, more angles to tell your story, stronger angles, and more opportunities to get commission. Remember, we also talked about opportunities in doing solution journalism collaboratively. Again, it's important to find common connections. Okay, so you're comparing what's similar, maybe an issue or a particular problem. But the second tip is also important. It's good to find connections. So what's the common thing? So in that, what I mean by that is you can look at programs. So is there a program that's been implemented across a region or across country? Or is there a project or an initiative or an investment, okay, that has been executed across communities, across maybe zones? Let's say in Nigeria, for example, where I'm from, we have what we call geopolitical zones, made up of different states. Okay, so in a geopolitical zone, there can be maybe 6 states or 5 states, depending. So imagine a project was implemented for a particular zone, a project targeting all the states in the zone. And in that project, some states are doing well, some states are not doing well. Why? So you see, that's a common connection that you can now look at. This is a very good example. I always like in solution journalism training. So this is an opportunity for a great collaborative solution journalism story. I'm sure a couple of us who work in public health or who report health in Nigeria, even from outside Nigeria, maybe you'll be familiar with this intervention, Saving 1 Million Lives initiative. It's a World Bank grant given to the government of Nigeria, $500 million. Okay, but the interesting thing here is it's a project that was based on results. So all the states in Nigeria participated in this intervention, and they were given a specific amount of money. Okay, if you see where I underline, I say states get rewarded for improvement in performance from their own baseline. So they get a certain amount of money, the same for a start. So it's like starting a race. People, you start the race from the same point, then based on your own effort, based on your own investment in yourself, will now determine what result you get. Either you come up top, or you come at the bottom. So they get these investments, and they are measured to say, okay, this is where you are, this is where you are on particular areas. Of course, there are so many issues that they can improve on, but the focus was on women and children, okay, maternal and child health. Okay, but then there are pillars, or areas that they are expected to improve on. So when you improve on those areas, you get more money to do more. Okay. So after a period of time, they are surveyed across those areas that they all agreed on to improve on. So after a certain time, after the survey, depending on the results that they get, you get more money. Either you get more money or you get less or you don't get any at all. Okay, so looking at this story, you can just report it from the angle of, oh, this state got this in this so amount of money or stuff like that. But if you're that there's already a common connection there to do amazing collaborative solution journalism work. So they did this intervention to improve on these specific areas. Okay, and they had these results after a period of time, say after 5 years. I think this was way back in 2012. So after 5 years, these are the results, and these are all public knowledge. You know, the information, they are all out there. The monies that they got after a period of time, their improvement, all the surveys, all of those are out there. Okay, so imagine now collaborating a group of journalists or a team of journalists coming together to look at how different states fared, say the top performing states and the worst performing states. What happened? You know, what strategies did they implement to achieve better results in these states? What happened in these other states? Is it the problem of leadership? Is it political commitment or will or stuff? What really contributed to these states doing with and the other state not doing? But of course, one person cannot do all of this alone. Even if you can, your reach will be limited. Remember, we talked about some benefits, doing things faster, you know, more reach, more impact. So imagine a group of journalists collaborating to analyze all of these, do interviews, interview stakeholders, interview beneficiaries, and come up. This gives opportunity to an amazing, an opportunity to do great solutions, collaborative solution journalism. So that's what happens when you find those common connections. Okay, an intervention that was implemented here and also in another place with different outcomes. What happened? Okay, that's an opportunity for people to learn. That's an opportunity for others to learn from history. What has happened? What exactly did they do differently? What insight? Remember the pillar, the third pillar, insight. What approach? What exactly did they do to come up with a different result, with a better result? That's an insight that will be helpful to others. You know, maybe a younger person who is leading another intervention now, a project. Those insights can help them. Yeah. So you want to take much time, but those are two tips that, you know, come to mind when I think of collaborative, doing solution journalism collaboratively. But I'll be happy to hear our thoughts, and also if we have any questions before I move ahead and talk about, you know, some other examples, especially of opportunities that I've seen around collaborative solution journalism. So I want to see 1, 2, 3 comments in the chat box.
I think you should continue. We'll do the conversations together.
Together, okay. All right,
Yeah.
that's fine. So that means we'll have enough time for all the back and forth and feedback and comments. Okay, so in terms of opportunities, like I keep saying, we all do this work because yes, we get commissions, we get paid and all of that. But at the end of the day, we're doing this, especially if you require, even across other spaces. And really everything is still connected to development. All of these issues that were important, everything is still one way or the other connected to one development goal or the other, all of the 17 sustainable development goals. Okay, but so when I was researching and preparing for this, I remember this opportunity. It actually closed, but there were great examples of solutions, collaborative solutions that came out of it. That's why I decided to share them. This is the Solution Journalism Accelerator Program. You can quickly Google it. It's run by the European Journalism Center. It has happened. This is the second cohort now that just closed. They had the first cohort in 2002, and the second cohort is just closed. I think they've also announced the recipients. Okay, so if you look at the vision, not clearly saying, screaming collaborative. Of course, the whole idea is focused on solution journalism. When we talk about solution journalism and opportunities, a lot of opportunities are coming up around solution journalism now, because even funders, donors are realizing that it's not all doom and gloom. Okay, there are things that are working, there are efforts that are working to address all of these issues. So why not invest in telling some of these stories as well, not just the issues. Okay, so there are lots of opportunities there. But if you look at the vision for this call, to inspire and enable media organizations in Europe to build resilience through creating greater public awareness, critical understanding, and positive change about urgent global issues. Yes, it's European, targeting European media organizations, but it doesn't say they can't work with other people. That's really the great thing about this. And the interest is on, engendering positive social change about urgent global issues. So yes, while it's targeting European-based media organizations, but the issues they are going to be talking about are global issues. Okay, so that means it's an opportunity to collaborate. And I think these guys, Reef Reporters, did an amazing job of that. They were in the first cohort. Okay, but I don't know all of the recipients, or I think them and another organization based out of Scotland. Greater Giovanni here. I think I'll get the name and put it in the chat when we are doing the interactive section. But what they did, especially for Reef Brothers, it's a German-based, this is just a PDF version of one of their stories that they translated to English, but it's German-based. But you see, targeted at Europe, that's what the call is about. And it's receiving this great amount of money that's really, very useful for news, especially now that revenue is shrinking and all of that. I think the grant is a maximum of 130,000 euros. But the really amazing thing they did there is they were looking at what's working in Africa that German audiences can learn from across food security, across technology. I think they were focusing on technology, how it's improving food security, and all of those interventions around food security, around agriculture. Okay, so that was what they did. Of course, because it's targeted at European-based media organizations, they didn't say, "Oh, we're going to stick to what's working in Europe or just Europe." They extended it. They looked at what's working in the global south, worked with African-based journalists, worked with people who are on ground, collaborated with people to find and report these stories. Okay, so for me, that's really a great example of the opportunity. So really, it's even if you see a call that's saying, oh, it's focusing on in a particular continent, there's nothing wrong, especially if it's talking about solution journalism. That's really the beauty of solution journalism, because it opens you up to look at what's working in other places. Okay, what's working in Asia that Europe can learn from. That's really the beauty of solution journalism, and it's more effective. It's more impactful when you do it collaboratively. The other organization I talked about, Greater Giovanni here, based in Scotland, what they were also looking at interventions that are improving, that are helping to address issues of health inequities. Okay, in the UK, specifically in Scotland. But they were not just looking at intervention. I remember, I think their first story was around energy, how the whole energy crisis was affecting healthcare because people couldn't put on heaters, they were trying to manage it and all of that. And that was leading to a lot of ill health and all. So they're looking at what's working, and their organizations helping to address these issues. But beyond that, they're also looking at what's working in other other places. I remember one of the stories they were working on was around period poverty. Okay, what's working to address it in Scotland, but again, what's also working to address issues of period poverty in some African countries. And they were working with journalists, commissioning journalists to investigate what's working in those places so that audiences in UK, policymakers in UK can also learn from those interventions. So that's really what happens when you open up to, when you open up to collaborating with others to look out for solutions. Yes, you can look for solutions around you in your community, but you open it up more when you collaborate, okay, when you go beyond where you are to look at what others are doing. And of course, the opportunities, it really starts from everywhere, if you ask me. I think if not all, most of us are on the ICFJ platforms. That's a place to connect with other people. I'm sure Paul will talk about that in his later, some of the platforms and how they connect journalists. But that's really one platform where you can connect with others. I don't know how many of us are familiar with Ghostwriter. I put their screenshots here because of this, particular keyword, because they actually hit it, mentions it, the platform powers the collaborative future of journalism. Okay, I think what they do is to help you connect with journalists in other places. I don't know what their revenue model is or what their business model is, but really empowering that platform to help journalists connect and collaborate. So such platforms, that's really where it starts. Events, conferences, you meet people, you keep those contacts. And when opportunity comes knocking, you're able to reach out to say, oh, I'm investigating this, but then I also want you to look at it from what's working from your own end or from your own angle. So that way you're pulling insights together, you're comparing and you're contrasting what's working. The Africa Initiative, the Solution Journalism Africa Initiative that I mentioned earlier, happening in Kenya and Nigeria. We also put out a call for, as a project, it's actually ending in a couple of weeks. But then we thought, we've seen all of these stories since the inception of the project. Okay, great stories, amazing stories. Some of the participants are also here on this call. Some of their stories are in the tracker, the Solution Journalism Tracker. That's a database maintained by the Solution Journalism Network of all of these solution stories from across the globe. So we'll be seeing these great stories, different formats, audio formats, TV formats, text. But then I think one thing that was missing was that collaborative element. So as the project wraps up, we started to put out that call to say, if you're going to look at a problem with a collaborative lens, if we're going to collaborate with others to do this, what's just share us ideas of what you're going to work on. We receive great submissions from journalists, and working with them now to publish, work on those stories and get them published. So that's doing it differently from what we've been seeing since the up to 2 years, 3 years of the project, because stories have been from communities. Again, like I said, great stories, but they're from communities. But now we want them to collaborate, look at other issues, but how they are being addressed from different states in Nigeria. So from what we've said so far, I'll just wrap up with a few thoughts that I collected from colleagues from different places. So she asking them, told them I'm doing this. I just wanted to hear their thoughts, what they thought about collaborative solution journalism, if it was worth doing and why they think it's important, if it was worth doing. But yeah, so I'll just leave our comments to when we have the interactive session. But yeah, this is what some of colleagues said, and I asked them their thoughts around why solution journalism is important. So I think it's there for you to look at and either disagree or agree. Again, I'm happy to also have this conversation once Paul takes the lead on sharing that conversation to hear our thoughts. But yeah, the first is from Dina. She's the founder of IGAP, based in Egypt. Also empowering collaboration, helping journalists publish their stories outside of the continent, get commissions and all. But this is what she had to say. I hope it's clear enough for us to read. But yeah, she said it allows us to cover cross-border solutions. I think it's something that has also resonated since this conversation started. And that's great because we usually look for, so this is one thing she said that was really instructive, because we usually look for solutions within communities, and that's great. Okay, we're looking at how people are addressing issues, but sometimes a community somewhere else has already built an effective solution to the same problem. Okay, remember when we talked about finding similarities, finding a common element that unites, that's what you want to collaborate on, or the issue. So collaborative solution journalism now allows us to bring the audience insight about such solutions from all over the world. Okay, so that way you are bringing insights and enriching the conversation. So in a sense, it's good to cover perspectives of the problem and response from different locations, particularly how approaches differ, but are headed towards the same goal. I think this is also key. They differ, but then they are headed towards the same goal. Again, speaking to what I said earlier about finding, comparing likes. They are heading towards addressing, let's say, issue of maybe drug abuse, gun violence, but then the approaches differ from different communities or from different states. So you're now trying to bring them together and say what's working, what's not working, what can we do. And that way, what that can help you do is you can even have a hybrid version of those interventions. So imagine a community wants to start a new intervention, start their own intervention to address the same problem by looking at those, what 2 or 3 other communities have already done. They are now creating a hybrid. Of course, if their contexts are similar, they're now creating a hybrid version of that intervention. And that's the power of collaboration. And that's also the power of solution journalism. Okay, so it says lessons can be learned from that difference, and the conclusion as for what works best and why it works can now be drawn. Justin says it provides an opportunity for reporters to draw insights from the implementation and impact of a specific solution in different communities, and also drives public accountability, since it will help to identify where there is a gap in an implementation. Again, it also speaks to what we've all alluded to at the beginning. We were talking about solution journalism for accountability, giving the people power, giving the public power to demand for better healthcare, demand for better leadership from the political class. You are drawing insight from what others are doing, and you are saying, look, this is what A and B, this is what they are doing. Why can't we try and replicate it? Okay, it's not rocket science. Yeah, so that's why collaboration is important. I also got some thoughts from Usman. Saying it's necessary because it provides insight into how a solution can be better. Of course, learnings from strengths and weaknesses of the same method. I think it's as if I asked them differently, but it's as if they all knew what I was going to be talking about. I like that they keep emphasizing on the same method. So that similarity that I talked about. So you can't compare things that are not alike or things that are not similar. There has to be a unifying factor, a common factor, the same project, the same strategy, but then trying to address the same problem. What's the difference? Okay. Hamza from FRC, and I actually like this from Hamza because his is on story ideas, because you always, like I said, you're always on the move. You need to get fresh ideas, fresh insight. You want to interest your editor. So for him, he feels collaboration helps with that. Okay, he said because sometimes getting a story idea is a challenge, but with the collaborative initiative, a lot can be achieved. So you're able to work with others to see, unique angles or unique ways of telling a particular story. My open says she thinks it will help the message reach. Of course, again, this is something we've all mentioned earlier about reach. So this person you have your own platform, you have your own audience or your own reach, but you're working on this story together and you are amplifying it. So that's more people benefiting from that collaborative effort. That's more people using that story to drive engagement. That's more people using that story to ask more questions and even better questions. So yeah, those are their thoughts. What are your thoughts? Thank you so much for listening. I hope I stayed within time. Last time I overshot my time, so
it's okay. Thank you very much, Chibuike, and thank you very much for everybody that stayed to the end of that presentation. And straight away, because the time has been fast spent, we are going to have this conversation as briefly as possible. But I would like to start with if you would like to share any comments directly, if you'd like to share your personal experience regarding solution journalism, please just raise your hand and I would allow you to talk. And I think one issue that's one of the questions that we are having from Tawid is how best can we collaborate with big media to produce a solutions journalism story? I think, Chibuike, what are your thoughts on this? And I will also share my personal perspective on this.
Yeah, thanks for, I'm glad you said you will share because these things, there are no right or wrong answer. So for me, I think big media, it's also about your antecedents. So if you are a young journalist, maybe you don't have a track record, I'm not sure of any big platform that will want to work with you. And of course, that's why platforms like GAP are there to help to help you walk through the story. Because the way it works, I don't think you can directly approach them, say, oh, I'm fresh out of school and I just want to publish on your platform. But if you're an established person, I don't think it's much of a problem, really. If you're an established journalist, you have, because when you pitch, usually you share your idea with the editor and you now share some of your works with them. That's usually what gets them interested, to see the quality of work you've done, the quality of platforms that you've published on. So that's usually the first interest for me. If I'm an editor, I'll be interested in where you've published before. So once you have that, I don't think it's a problem getting your content into big media. Once you have a good topical story to share, again, you're working. So imagine you're working on it and you're sharing fresh perspectives. Maybe people have been focused on one particular element and now you're bringing in a fresh one to say, look, I'm doing this and I'm working with journalists across different zones to do this. Sure, someone will be interested in that. But again, like I said, they want to know that you're able to deliver once they commission over.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I think what I would also like to share is the word big media that you mentioned. It's from my personal experience, because they are big, they have a much bigger and much wider audience. They would also desire bigger stories. For instance, the story that you were initially trying to look at from the perspective of your state or your local government or your country, because it may not properly resonate well, it may not sound really big enough for that kind of platform. For you to be able to work on those kinds of stories, you may have to make it much bigger. I have pitched stories that look at my country before to big outlets that would ask me, Paul, can you do more than your country? Can you expand it to more regions? And I think collaboration is really, really a good way for you to approach that. It's really important for you to be able to work with other journalists, and so that everybody wins. That story becomes something that is more concrete, that is more authoritative, and you are also able to put it in the media outlet that you desire that story to be on. So that's what I would also like to contribute. There is another comment there that said, so as someone who is new to solutions journalism, and you have an idea for a story, say between two African countries, where one has been able to solve an issue the other is trying to solve, how best can you find someone on ground to collaborate with beyond the information you find on the net? Chibuike.
Thank you for the question. Like I said, networks, they're not built overnight. Okay. And there are people who are very strategic about building networks and maintaining networks. So you have the opportunity to meet someone. You don't just get what you want from them and throw them away because you don't know when you will need them again. So it goes back to who you know already. And like I said in my presentation, that's where a platform like ICFJ can play a huge role. I see people dropping comments that to say, oh, who is working on this, or I want to do this, I need help with this. That's one way you can, reach out. Paul is a community manager. Depending on, I know the other communities and other community managers, but for the English community, I'm sure that's something that Paul can help with. On Twitter too, you can put it out on Twitter. I think there's a hashtag that is used for that, journal request or something. So as a journalist, you need something, you tweet it and put hashtag journal request. So it's likely, and tag relevant people. Okay, someone you know can know someone. Again, it's about network. So network is like a chain reaction. So maybe you don't know the person, but another person you know might know. So that's really why it's important to stick to networks, because you can't really do it alone. The person's contacts won't just come into your phone, from the air. It has to be someone that will provide it, and that's why network is really important. Thank you.
Yes, I think I agree with you absolutely. And here we are always willing and happy and excited to facilitate those kinds of networking. And I saw some comments of individuals trying to work together. Please, even if you have something that you are working on and you want to partner with a journalist in any part of the world, I'm more than willing to help in facilitating that connection by being able to bring you connections from across our community. So if you look at the chat box right now, I just put my email address there. Just let me know what you're working on and which part of the world you would like to see collaboration. And I saw that some individuals were talking about working together in the chat box. And if you want to take that further, we can really make it really well commended and really well done for you too. So please look at, I just dropped my chat box, email address in the chat box, copy it, be free to mail me directly about your requests, and we are going to see how best we can help you. And I think somebody also mentioned an issue that I think I would also like your attention, if you can help us shed more light on this issue of collaborative journalism, doing a story and going back to look at those stories again, follow-up stories regarding collaborative stories, regarding probably projects that you've already reported on, going back to look at whether those projects were successful or they were not successful. How do you see that working out?
Thanks, Paul. I totally agree with that. And that's an opportunity we don't always explore, because we're always looking for what's the next thing, what's the next idea to pitch, what's the next story idea. But there are also ideas in those stories. So imagine you do a story 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a solution story. Now, 3 years later, you go back and ask, how is this intervention faring? Is it still working? Has it been scaled up? Has it reached more people? There's a story there. Because sustainability is a very big problem. So what's been their sustainability journey? So you do a story like, 2 years ago, this intervention started to address this problem. 5 years later, they are still powering on. 5 years later, they've expanded to 4 other African countries. That's a story there. If it is not working, if you go back and find out that the intervention that you wrote about 3 years ago, that was addressing a particular problem has packed up, that's a story there as well. Okay, because really thank you for bringing this up, because a lot of times you say, oh, solution stories are about what's working, but if it's about what's what's not working, what has not worked, but the key thing there is that there was an effort, so it's not an intention. They didn't intend to do something, they actually tried to do something and it was working at some point, then it stopped. There's a story there. Why did it stop? What happened? They run short of funds. They now start talking of issues of sustainability. What are better ways to fund this thing so that they are sustainable and keep impacting people over time? So yes, totally agree with you. I don't know who asked that question, but that's really brilliant and a good way to go back to stories and have more story ideas, more collaborations, to reach out to the people there.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Probably the last question that I would want you to take before your last words is somebody also, Rajan, would like to know what precautions to be peculiarly considered when undertaking collaborative solutions journalism. What are the risks and what are the precautions that you have to take that are different from other forms of journalism?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Raja. I think the biggest issue is being misunderstood and the story being seen as PR. As someone also shared in the chat when we started the conversation, when we just asked people their experiences around solution journalism. So I think the golden rule there, or for me, the profession that should be taken is being careful and letting the person you are telling their story know that, look, I'm going to be asking the hard questions. This is not PR. Okay, if you need a PR person, you can hire a PR person to amplify your story, because a PR person is not going to be talking to them, but it's not going to be asking them questions around, oh, what's not working? Okay, what are the limitations of this intervention? What are areas you can do better? So some people are usually not comfortable answering those. So I think the precaution is letting them know beforehand that, look, this is the essence of the story, and being bold to ask those questions. Okay, being bold to ask those questions, all those questions around what's not working, because that way you are telling the whole story. Of course, they'll be happy to tell you the response pillar, how they are doing it, all of the amazing work they are doing, focusing on the how. Of course, you want to know how, not just to say we did this, but how did they do it? They'll be happy to tell you the evidence of their impact. They'll be happy to tell you some of the lessons, but the problem is always, oh, what's not working, what can be done better, and it's a bit of a struggle. So it's the precaution I think you need to keep in mind, so that your story will be seen as a PR. So I think that's one thing that quickly comes to mind. Yeah, I think that also applies to the second question. The golden tip for better solution journalism is just to keep in mind that it is not PR. So you need to tell the whole story. What's working, what's not working, how did they do it? So whoever is reading the story has a full picture of that particular intervention. And really, one place you can go to get this idea, just Google Solution Journalism Tracker. They have over close to 15,000 now, 15,000 stories has been curated, and people vet these stories to see that at least they meet the SoJo criteria to an extent before they put them on the. So that's on the tracker. So that's a good place to get some inspiration from the write.
So a straightforward question that just snuck in, and I'll take the last one. We would like to know what's the difference between solutions journalism, peace journalism, and constructive journalism. Are they the same, Chibuike?
Interesting. So to be honest, the simple answer is, I would say is honestly, I don't know. I think I'm hearing about peace journalism for the first time. I haven't heard about peace journalism. Yeah, to be honest. But solution journalism, that's what we've been talking about since, reporting beyond the problems. Constructive. Sometimes that conversation comes up if they are the same, if they are sort of two sides of the same coin. I think it's about usually my own explanation is I think it's about regions. I know solution journalism is more in the US, even us in Africa, we also are adopting it a lot now. But constructive journalism is more around Europe. That's usually the term that I see a lot around European journalism, European-based media organization. But essentially, they are pretty much the same for constructive and solution journalism, because they are saying don't report just on what's not working, but what people are doing to address those issues. Constructive, so that way you are reporting news constructively, not just you're always putting people in, you're putting problems in the faces of people. So they're pretty much the same. But for peace, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that. Maybe you can help me.
Okay. So I'm looking at our Facebook group. I can see some comments. So far, I don't think there is any question. So before we take it, I also want to. I saw a comment from Winston Mwale, who says, "Thanks for the presentation. At Africa Brief here in Malawi, we are just diving into solutions journalism. It's a new territory, but with such presentations, we'll keep on pushing." So thank you for that comment, Winston. And if you need any kind of support, if you need any additional insights, whatever you need, please do not hesitate to reach out, and I'll do my best to actively engage and see how we can help you to, if you need additional training or whatever that your team needs. And this goes to anybody, any editor, any media house that is out there, any organization that is out there, any journalist that is struggling or desire to actually work on any aspect of the issues that we mentioned today. We have the access to professionals like Chibuike that are more than willing to actually help out and provide some of the insights on this topical issue. So please get across to us, and we'll be very much happy to help you get the skills and information that you need. If you also want to establish collaboration, if you want to partner, if you're looking for journalists in many parts of the world that you want to work with for any story, please, we are always happy and willing to help to the best of our ability. Is one of the reasons why we have this actively engaging forum. If you want to really make sure that if you want to much quickly reach out to me and connect with journalists in other parts of the world, I would highly recommend that you join our Facebook forum. If you're not a member of that Facebook forum, I just put the link in the chat box right now. Just click the link, request to join, and I'm going to allow you to join the Facebook forum, where you can directly interact with a lot of journalists thousands of journalists that are in different parts of the world. So before we call it today, Chibuike, if there is anything that you think if there is one or two things that you think our forum members or these webinar attendees need to go home with, what do you think would be your last words, and what is your take-home message for our forum members?
Okay, thanks for. Sorry, if I don't know how much time. I thought I was supposed to end by 5. I thought I was doing it up. Anyway, is it okay to take? Okay, because I saw one question in the chat that no time to address that.
Okay, you can address that question. Then
someone asking, is solution journalism part of development journalism? You say that. Muhammad Babangida.
Yes, you can take that question.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Solution journalism, development journalism, and my answer would be yes. Okay, development journalism or solution journalism is a subset. You can put it under development journalism, because development journalism you're talking about, or it's just an approach. Usually, when we talk about solution journalism, we also say we're not teaching people a different form of journalism. Not at all. It's the same principles of journalism that applies. Of course, you have to be ethical, you have to be objective, you have to be factual. Whatever you're putting out there, you have to fact check it. That's why evidence is evidence-based. You can't say someone reached impacted 5 million people and they can't show you some evidence of that. So it's really not about whether it's a type or not. It's just an approach. But I think development journalism just covers this whole issue of all of the things that affect us as humans, all of the sustainable development goals. But then solution journalism is an approach to tell those stories better, and not just about the problems. I hope that's helpful. And for takeaway that you asked for, I think my response would be, we should think more collaboratively, because the times are changing, things are happening faster. Of course, we're going to talk about AI and all of that. So you need to turn up results faster, you need to have more reach, you need to be impact. Your work needs to be to drive more impact, because that's what will get the next editor to commission you. If you run an opposition, that's what get the funder to say, oh, your work has been impactful. So how do you do that faster? It's by collaborating. So that's really why I want us to, one thing I want us to go home with. Collaborate more for better impact, for more reach, and again, for importantly, for to be more sustainable, because this way you're able to keep on doing what you're doing. You don't do it for a few months and you pack up, but you're able to collaborate with more people to have more reach, to be more effective and sustain your work eventually. Yeah, I think those will be my final words. Thanks.
So thank you very much. Let me also say a quick shout out to everybody watching on Facebook. And let me say thank you to Abdurrahman. Abdurrahman, thank you. You were supposed to have a question, but you said that you've had clarification on your inquiry during the course of the presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you. We can view Wekezano. I know I didn't pronounce that well. Sorry. Thanks for joining us from Ghana. Thanks for watching this live stream on Facebook. And also Chibuike, I also want to say thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. They described this webinar as very interesting, very, very instructive and impactful. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this session. I also want to encourage you to please, if you're not a member of our forum, I encourage you to please click it and be part of our forum and be part of our rapidly expanding community of journalists spread across the world that will bring to you resources, insights, information, tools, and training information like this, also information about opportunities that you can use to expand and improve your practice as a journalist. And to learn more about this initiative and several other initiatives from the International Center for Journalists, I encourage you to check out www.icfj.org to be able to get more information about this initiative and several other ICFJs and initiatives. And if you're also seeking out resources and other materials that would help you in your journalism career, I encourage you to check out IJNet on www.ijnet.org. And very soon, a lot of insights that are shared on webinars like these are often shared. There are also resource tools on IJNet that you can use to actually expand and work on whatever interests that you have on any topical issue or any vocation. So I encourage you to check out information about resources and opportunities on ignet.org. So I want to say a very big thank you to Chibuike. I want to thank everybody that has been able to be with us on this webinar. I hope you've been able to take one or two things from this webinar, and I hope we are going to apply it in whatever you are doing as a person. And before I call it a day, please, I want to also use this to also drive attention to any solutions journalism that you've written, any SoJo story that you've written that you would like me to share with our forum members. And hopefully, if you've done any solution journalism recently, it is going to qualify for a reporting grant, and I'm really going to be excited to share it with you, with other forum members. So please, if you cannot pass it across to me via email, I encourage you to do that. The link to our Facebook forum and the administrator. So please share your most recent solution journalism story with me. And we are going to be having a little grant for one of those stories, which could be yours. So thank you very much for everything. Thank you for being part of our audience today. Thank you very much, Chibuike, for being a resourceful guest. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your day. So thank you very much, and bye from me.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, Paul. Thanks, everyone, for actively participating. Bye.